Hello and welcome to Unstuck with me, Andri Søren. I'm a musician and a photographer, amongst other things, but there's no time for explaining all of that. This is a vlog about all of the things I've learned and I'm learning about being a creative type, let's say, so somebody who is trying to earn a living from their passions and just trying to stay sane and solvent at the same time. You'll have to excuse me because I've got a cold for the past few days. And as some of you may know, when you're self-employed or a freelancer and you get sick, boo-hoo for you. I've just been working anyway. And that's some of the stuff I want to talk about, but much more I want to give a sort of general idea of what it's like trying to live day by day as a creative person. And the reason I think that is interesting to talk about is because I had absolutely no idea, or as we like to say in Scotland, not a Scooby, about what that would be like. And I made a video in the last episode, video 3, about how to quit your job, and I touched upon the ways you can start working out what it's like to be basically on your own all the time and trying to move forward with your own projects. But I'm going to give a little bit more granular detail in this video about what it's like day by day. So what's it like, a day in the life of a creative person? It's awesome, of course. Well, it's a bit more nuanced than that. Long story short, I was an architect for 6 years, and 6 years ago I quit that. I left behind that profession to try and just do what I love, and that's what I'm doing as of today. But of course the journey was not a straight line, not at all, so I would like to share some of the things that I picked up or noticed or observed over those years of making that transition, which, oh boy, I wish I'd known before I'd started, or it certainly would have been interesting to have some perspective on that. There's 3 things that come to mind when I think about a day in the life of a creative person. The first is that it's a journey, and that could sound a bit simplistic, but it really is going to take quite some time for you to pick up all of the things you need to keep yourself healthy of mind, healthy of spirit, a healthy bank balance too, and that's perfectly normal. And especially this is going to be the case when you're coming from somewhere already very, clearly delineated, hard one, or where the expectations of people around you are such that, nobody, including yourself, can imagine another way of life. There are lots of ways of life which are not the same as you have right now, and if you're going to go from one to another, you're going to have to accept that there's this kind of transmogrification or shift that's necessary. And as with every shift, there are steps, there are setbacks, and that's all par for the course. That's all very normal. But let's get right down to it. A day in the life of a creative person means that nobody tells you what to do. Fantastic, right? Well, there's a downside to that, and that's that nobody tells you what to do. Now, why would that be a problem? Well, of course it depends on your character, but the most of us are used to some kind of structure or schedule. In fact, we go through life basically being prepared to have a non-stop itinerary already planned out for us from an early age, from school through to university, through to our jobs. And it's only usually at retirement that you're left with this odd hole in your life where you've got to fill it with things. But we're not there yet. What this does is that it leads us to have a whole section of life or of our days or weeks which are already planned out. And this is actually really good in many ways. We might not all like doing what we're doing, but it takes an awful lot of the decisions that we might need to take away from us and means that we are free in the hours which are completely unstructured to be, free. So when we find ourselves out of our own choosing, usually in a place where we make all the choices and we make all the decisions, we're faced with an abundance of decisions and things that we need to decide about. And there is absolutely a thing called decision fatigue, and people talk about it more and more. And it can be crippling for somebody who's on their own and trying to be a creative person or be a freelancer or be a consultant, because if you take all these decisions at face value and treat them all equally, before you know it, you're just going to burn yourself out, because you can't constantly be asking questions about things. Now, it really depends on the work you're doing or the creative field you're in, but trust me, it's a thing. And I'm going to touch upon some strategies to deal with this in the second part of this video. The third thing, and perhaps the biggest one that I can think of, which really lands home once you're out there on your own, trying to be all things to all people, and by that I mean trying to get them to either look at your work or buy your work or engage with you and, you know, run a business and all these things, is that you have to be all things to yourself as well. And this is really a fascinating topic, and I'm no psychologist, but I can share what I've learned. The best analogy I have for this is something like, you know, wearing many different hats, because you've got to wear the hat of, okay, I'm a creative person, I'm an artist perhaps, I am also a businessman or woman, I'm also my own critic, I'm also my own motivator, and I'm sure hoping that this hat movement isn't looking too ridiculous, but hey, too late now. But what this means is that if you shift between those modes constantly, it's going to drive you completely nuts, because nothing will ever be good enough. You'll never be making enough money, your work will never be good enough, you'll be feeling down purely thanks to the criticism you give yourself, even before you get any criticism from anyone else. And it can be a really vicious circle. In fact, it's not even a circle, it's circles within circles within circles. And you can go round and round and round. So the point is that we have to learn how to recognize when we are going to wear these hats, or when we are going to take these roles with ourselves, and be aware of when, how can I put it, we've been wearing one hat for too long perhaps, or that simply, you know, if you want to put it another way, the voice in your head which says, you know, this is not good enough, or I need to earn more money, is a valid one, but you cannot listen to all of them at the same time, which is again something I'm going to come to in the next part of the video. So what's worth bearing in mind is that this process of dealing with all of these different roles that you are expecting of yourself and people expect of you is psychologically wearing. It is tough. And so we all need to come up with a strategy to either place these roles or voices in a certain spot in our head, or let's say analyze the questions that they bring up at a certain time and not just randomly, because that's a recipe for not getting anything done. But as I talked about in the third video, there's also an opportunity to look for people with whom you can share these things with. Allies who might be in the same field, or perhaps even better, a slightly different one. And the important thing is, of course, to remain positive and not tell a story of how awful and difficult it all is, because that's no fun to listen to for very long. But it helps us get perspective on our problems and to bounce things around and to just let those words fall out of our mouths and see if it still sounds normal as we listen to the echo of that sound fade away. It sounds a bit esoteric, but I swear talking helps. You know, it also helps going for a walk, and if that involves talking to yourself, that can also be really, really helpful. And that neatly brings me to the second section of the video, where I want to talk about 3 ways of approaching these issues that can help you overcome them, or at least not have them become as debilitating as they sometimes were for myself. The first is really simple, but it's really worth repeating, and it's really worth keeping in mind, and it is choosing modest goals. This is really important, particularly in the beginning, because otherwise you're going to find yourself overwhelmed with all of these ideas, all of these possible trajectories that you might undertake, and just choosing a few steps and then breaking those steps into sub-steps and just going through them one by one, whatever it is you need to do to register yourself as a self-employed person, to find a working space, to do those things which you would say are maybe not the things which require a lot of brain power. they are still significant and they're not often faced by people in a normal job. And so they are part of the process. Take some modest goals, be they internal, so how you work with yourself, or external, related to how you're working with everyone else, and break them down and get them done one by one. You might call them baby steps. The second thing that you can do, and I've done, which has helped me so much, is finding a structure for basically largely eliminating or avoiding decisions or distractions. This can take many forms, and I'm going to talk about that in a separate video or two, or possibly even three, because there's so much to talk about. Although you can check out my podcast for some rough discussion about that. But the main thing that it basically involves is carving out time to do the things that are important to you and that you recognize need doing, which can include being creative, but also putting time aside to do the necessary administration you need to do, and taking time just to dream and to be free of all of the things which you found oppressive or boring in the past. And another key one is just to avoid the basically cancerous effects of social media and all of the basically external forces and influences that can pull you aside from your mission. And your one is the most important one, not what everyone else is doing. Maybe it's good to know about it sometimes, but there's certain points in life where you should just block it all out and just follow your own path. And the third one and the last one is one I really like, and it's a simple phrase, which is be good to yourself. Now that could sound, again, very simple and almost silly, but it's so easy to forget. And if you would say, let's say, extrapolate this situation to an office with employees, of course it's important how people treat each other, and that's how a good organization functions. And in a perverse way, it's the same even when you're on your own. You need to find a healthy balance of talking to yourself critically, as well as positively, and it's that simple. So, as I said in point 2, if you're structuring your week or your day, make some time just to enjoy the fact that you are now free in a way of the usual structure that people normally face. Because there's plenty of other challenges built into the rest of the things you have to do. And I mean, I can't say it better than just be good to yourself. So that's that. Something of an idea of what a day in the life of a creative person is like. Although I suppose I didn't talk exactly about days, but more or less the general good fight that we have to fight. But I hope that it was useful, and I would really love to hear if it was, or also if it wasn't. And I've had mostly, I have to say, really great messages privately and some public ones that make such a difference for me and give me a lot of fuel and energy to continue this a monologue essentially. But I would rather it would be a conversation. I really enjoy and appreciate hearing from you, so do let me know. Lastly, in other news and music news, I've been making more music, and so there's some videos to come, which is really exciting for me. And I would say that's about it for this video. So I'm gonna tell you to go get yourself unstuck, and ciao for now.